Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Jug Show. So, we're doing our first recording of the new year. I'm really excited to get started. We're going to start something a bit different this time. So, we just finished up with the X-Men. Now, we're moving on to whose year this belongs to. Ladies and gentlemen, we're working Fantastic Four now. So, the Fantastic Four are already going to have a big start to the year. We have the upcoming Doom event, One World Under Doom, with Doom becoming Sorcerer Supreme and conquering the Earth, and he's finally getting the recognition he always felt like he deserved. That's always been Doom's character. He's always felt like he should be in charge. So, we're getting that. That's going to be big. Ryan North is writing, and he's done a spectacular job on the Fantastic Four so far. The current storylines are actually going to intersect with it, so we're pretty much going. So it's going to be like you know what we're getting. Come on, you guys are comic book readers. You know what we're talking about here. But yeah, so the current run for the Fantastic Four is going to tie into it. We've already getting confirmations. We're going to have a lot to talk about with Valeria and Doom, their relationship. We've already seen some things that are going to be happening, and I'm really excited for that. But the best one, the one I'm really excited for, is going to be in March, and we have going to have Fantastic Four crossing over with freaking Zilla, man. I am just so excited for that. I love Godzilla, and I love the Fantastic Four. Look at this freaking variant cover here, man. I love this. It's so cool. I've always loved the old-time boxing versus poster. These things have always been so cool, and I am so excited. I cannot even begin to describe my excitement. Okay, so calming down again, we're going to move on to the actual thing we're going to be talking about today. This is something I'm actually really excited to talk about. This is going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to be very serious, though, too. So we're focusing only on the singular issue of the Ryan North run. And I've actually been wanting this kind of particular issue. Now, while the issue itself was good and brings up a lot of things, I feel like it also kind of brings up one of the weaker parts of Ryan North's current run. Now, given the fact that what we've seen in previous runs, with this particular weakness, it's not that bad in comparison. So, we're going to be talking about Fantastic Four 27, and specifically who it focuses on, Nicki Grimm, the newly adopted daughter of Ben Grimm and Alicia Masters, along with her brother, Joe Venn. So, here's the thing. This type of issue has actually been something I've been very excited to see, because it's going to be dealing with Nicki's issues of living on Earth. Nicki Grimm is a Skrull and a shapeshifter, and now she's starting to realize that in human folklore, human legends, and so many instances of villainy, shapeshifters are seen as the bad guys, because mainly they use their abilities for deception, trickery, and all-around badness. The reason why I've always felt like this is an issue that needs to be brought up is because it actually plays 100% into the Fantastic Four's kind of storytelling, the functions and dysfunctions of a family unit. So the reason why I actually enjoy Joe and Nicki since they were introduced in the 2018 run by Dan Slott is because they can introduce new dynamics of what can happen in the family unit by creating a adopted blended family. Because when it comes to adoption, various people have adopted people that aren't a part of their culture. This is Joe and Nicki in this case. And because of that, it has led to so many problems and so many adaptations for the family units, things that the parents have to do, things that the kids have to go through. And I really feel like this is going to be an interesting part of the Fantastic Four, especially for Ben and Alicia going forward. And especially because the Inhumans and not the Inhumans. Well, yeah, we'll bring up the Inhumans later when it comes to Joe. But the fact is, the Kree and the Skrull have also been enemies to the Fantastic Four, especially the Skrulls. So, having this particular type of story with Nicki, not only has it been very expected, but it's great that it's finally happening. So, let's start by talking about the actual issue. As I said, Nicki is seeing a lot of issues when it comes to shapeshifters and the perceptions of on Earth. Now, this isn't just a scroll thing. There's other shapeshifters being brought up too, like Mystique and Loki. Now, Mystique probably doesn't really care. She's probably also gone through this for herself, and she always likes how she doesn't really care how she's perceived, especially by humans. But when it comes to Loki, he's a bit more sensitive, so he might actually care a little bit. But for Nicki, it's actually more of a cultural thing to her. So she starts going through everything. She starts and influenced by her, not just well, actually no, it was just her. It was her cousins. It was Franklin and Valeria getting up to their teenage mischief, convincing her to use her abilities to get them out of trouble. Kid hijinks. What are you gonna do? What's a really interesting development, though, is the fact that Nicki is now actually talking. She's breaking the fourth wall. She's taking after her aunt Jen. We got another green fourth wall breaker, and frankly, I actually really like that. Like, it seems a little out of the blue, but it doesn't really matter. That's fine, and it's kind of nice. And the idea that she can break the fourth wall can also add to her character and future dynamics for her story. And it would be really nice to see her actually maybe interact with Jen in a very similar way. Like that's something I've always kind of like wanted to see. The idea of one fourth wall breaker meeting another, and they break the fourth wall together, and kind of have like a conversation between the two of them and the actual audience. I've rarely seen that kind of dynamic, and I know, and it's actually incredibly funny when it does. It's kind of like when in the She-Hulk series, I was begging for Luis from the Ant-Man movies to make an appearance so he could do his rambling explanation where he goes into a flashback to a flashback to a flashback type of story. And we have She-Hulk, who might be questioning him because he might be on the stand, and the idea like she's noticing that we're flashing back, and back, and she's like, "What's going on?" These type of dynamics are incredibly hilarious. So I'm glad Nicki now has this new type of dynamic of breaking the fourth wall. So that's going to be another fun thing to continue. So continuing at the story, she gets caught. Of course, she gets caught. These things never stay away from the parents for a long time. Even with her spectacular Reed Richards impersonation here. So then we move on to the bigger issue of the scenario. She's talking with Ben, and he's bringing up like why he feels like what she's trying to do with her shapeshifting is a bit of a bad idea. But she's also arguing that it's a part of her. It's part of her, not only part of her biology, but it's even what she's done is even considered polite on Scrollos. This isn't like a fictional concept. This actually happens in real life, especially amongst adopted families. Like in their case, they might be practicing some of their cultural practices, speaking the language, doing all those type of things. Now, none of them is as bad as shapeshifting into somebody else to get out of trouble, but I think we could probably come up with a few scenarios. But then he does something. But then he kind of argues that she's on Earth now, and these people might have a bit of a problem. So what's actually good is the fact that Nicki isn't actually hiding who she is as a Skrull, but she's kind of retaining some of her practices, which in itself is an issue. So she's very reluctant to actually do this. But the fact is, she doesn't resent Ben. She doesn't resent her family. She's actually a very loving character, and I'm looking forward to more storylines based off her. So continuing off, then we have the net go the next day at school, and we have the mole man attacking. So she does the thing where she tries to shapeshift to try more or less to intimidate him off by saying the entire Fantastic Four are here. But of course, being a singular person, she can't transform into the Fantastic Four on all members of the Fantastic Four by herself. So she gets caught out. And then attacked by the Mole Man. Then she does something I'm not actually 100% on board for. She has this idea more focusing on her sense of self by, actually shifting more her density, her body mass, and consider that to be the good shape-shifting. I won't lie. See, I feel like that was a bit too much alike to Kamala Khan's story. She had the ability to shapeshift, and when she couldn't control it, she shapeshifted into Captain Marvel, her idol. And then by regaining her sense of self, she transformed back into Kamala and never wanted to do it again because she's so okay with who she is. So I get where Ryan is coming from. But the idea of the shapeshifting actually being a part of Skrull culture, I feel like isn't something is something we still need to focus on. So the idea to transform into somebody else should actually be different to how Nicki perceives it, to how a human would perceive it. And I really feel like that would be a very interesting direction to go for Ryan or maybe even any other writer. I'm not saying he's wrong here, but I am saying that I feel like there's a lot more development that could be had for Nicki. So even though she accepts a sense of self, she's not going to be ashamed of who she is as a Skrull, and she gets all these friends at the end here. This is the actual ultimate problem with Ryan North's run. He's just one guy, and he's laying down the groundwork for all these different characters for future writers. He's doing the episodic storytelling, which means we don't have a sense of narrative for it. We're getting great character moments, great development for the characters, but it's still just short term. It's been a while since we've even talked about Susan actually being an archaeologist. So, what Nicki has been going through and what she's going to continue going through is a very big deal. But I don't know if we're going to be seeing again during the run. Part of me is even a little bit worried that we might not actually be getting that Ryan might actually even leave after the Doom event. God, I hope he doesn't leave after the Doom event. I need to know who the next writer is going to be before we can let Ryan go. And I'm really hoping the next writer is going to be someone great. I'm enjoying Ryan's run. He's a very intelligent writer. He's fun. He's creative. He's expansive. He's a different type of writer. Like, you really feel like when it comes to so many writers, you can compare them to another one. You say they're going to do something like how this writer did this type of story. Ryan is a very different writer. He does things that are completely out of pocket. He does things because they might seem funny or lighthearted. If you haven't listened to his podcast that he wrote for Squirrel Girl, the Squirrel Girl's Unbeatable radio show, I recommend you go listen to it. It is funny, it is lighthearted, and frankly, heartwarming. And he's done the one thing I've always wanted with Magneto. He's a grouchy old man. He does this funny bit with Magneto, calling the radio show, and I'm just gonna leave it there. You guys got to go see that. So, Ryan's writing is great. I'm very curious to what it could be if it was more narrative based rather than episodic. So that's my only issue with this. I actually feel like there needs to be more development on it, and I feel like he might have closed the door a little bit too much. Now, even if he did try and close the door, I'm not saying he did. In fact, I don't even think he would. I feel like he'd leave that still a bit open, and there's still a lot more to talk about with what Nicki would experience. So that's the thing. I don't know if we're going to see any more development on it. Well, at least by Ryan. I mean, Ryan also still needs to give Joe a little bit of focus. And I believe once when I was conversing with Ryan, that he confirmed that Joe and Nicki are actually going to also meet the Puppet Master, or the Puppet Master is going to show up in the future issues. And I'm really excited for that, given the fact that the Puppet Master is technically Joe and Nicki's adopted grandfather. So while this is technically a weakness for the current Fantastic Four run, that's not saying this run hasn't been absolutely spectacular. It's almost redefined it's revitalized the Fantastic Four. The last run I could consider was actually this good, honestly, would be Jacob Robinson's run. He tried, like Jacob Robinson, Ryan is trying to give credit and stories and focus to every single member of the family. For a lot of writers, they might end up picking one that they probably relate to. It's usually Reed or Ben. They get the most focus, and the other ones kind of they get more side focus. Moments that we keep thinking, Like, say, when Johnny died during Hickman's run, we barely see Susan's actual feelings towards the matter, despite the fact it's her little brother. But Hickman focuses a lot on Reed. Ryan is trying to give everybody their focus, their dues. He's trying to give them their dues, and he's doing great with that. Especially with Alicia. He's expanded her relationship with Reed. He's expanded her relationship with Susan. He's showing just how close they are. We just need an issue now with her and Johnny. There's no way Elijah isn't going to be brought up with that, is there? Oh, boy. Anyway, so here's the thing. I also want to get back to talking about Nicki here, about things that can actually be developed. Nicki is definitely a very fascinating character, and I'm really hoping for more. Because one of the sad things about her living on Earth is Earth's experienced so many attacks by the Skrulls during their war period with the Kree, so they can use Earth as a base of operations and a strategic point in their war. People are going to be very suspicious of her. People are going to be suspicious if she's actually on board with being on Earth, and she is. She's not some secret plant or anything. She's on Earth. She's going to live here. She wants to be raised here, and she wants to be raised with the family. But sad fact is, people are going to be suspicious of things that are different. And she's green with pointy ears and can shapeshift. So people are going to be suspicious of her. This is also one of the reasons I think we should keep the idea of the fact that she would like to shapeshift into people, or even shapeshift her appearance into somebody else. Because that idea, because she could still view it as a compliment. She's just practicing being a Skrull, practicing something from her home world, but people would find that very suspicious. Now, I know what you're thinking. Of course that's suspicious. She's becoming someone else. She's not looking how she's supposed to. People in public have gone on their phones and started talking the language that's not native to the country they're currently in. That's almost a similar scenario, because they could be saying anything. But I try not to be suspicious. But there are the people that are. There are people that say horrible things to people that are just doing that, when they could be just saying some nice things to their spouse. But they're thinking, you're in our country now, so you have to speak like us. That's where I think that the scenario is a little bit not off-putting, but I just feel like it's incomplete. I really do feel like it's a very incomplete point of the story. And it's good that it's incomplete. I mean, he's only got 26 issues. He's not going to be able to do the whole thing on his own. This is the actual issue with the FF currently. They're just relegated to the single book. Ryan has to deal with all of this on his own. He's bearing the whole weight of the Fantastic Four on his shoulders. And as great as he's doing, that's still too much for one guy to ask of one guy. Even in March, like I mentioned before, we got 3 books with the Fantastic Four. They're all written by Ryan. I don't know if he wants to do that. I don't know if editorial's making him do that, but it needs its expansion. We should get some Infinity comics. Take some pressure off Ryan. Zach Gorman wrote a great short Infinity comics. I'm still very upset that was only 4 issues, because that was a very fun comic. Give the kids their own focus comic. This is what this conversation is leading to. I actually think that the Fantastic Four kids should actually get their own story, their own comic. Not because I feel like Ryan would do them dirty. Hell, if anything, I think Ryan should go from the Core 4 to the kids, and we might get someone else on the Core 4, because I really like the way how he writes young people. Like how he written Squirrel Girl. He was fantastic in that. Not to mention how he also wrote Skrulls in his Secret Invasion. I'm still finding it funny that in the book that was supposed to hype up the upcoming series, it was the book that was definitely better than the series. It's if you haven't read his Secret Invasion, you got to go read it. He did the one thing I never expected any writer to do. He got me to like Maria Hill. I'm still trying to figure out how he did that. Seriously, Ryan, round of applause to you, mate. Round of applause. You did something I didn't think anybody could do. You got me to like Maria Hill. So if you don't like Maria Hill, try reading Ryan North and see if you can come out still not liking Maria Hill. It's not easy. So expanding the four, especially with the fact that their upcoming MCU movie is debuting in, I think it's June this year, it would only make sense to start pushing them and helping people really understand who these characters are. We already have the Thing as well coming out, but the downside to that is that its synopsis says that we're going to be dealing with more of Ben's, like a sense of mysterious history by Ben. Now, while that does intrigue me on a level, there are a few things that frustrate me. I feel like we need to talk about Ben as a parent and like how he's adapting to actually raising his own kids, especially after his own upbringing. Now, granted, that actually might come up here. So I'm trying to give that to the benefit of the doubt. But my problem really lies in the fact that since their return in 2018, Ben has received, I think, about 3 solos, including this one, as well as various types of single comic events that focus mainly on him, rather than the other 3. Reed hasn't received anything like this, Johnny hasn't received anything like this, and Susan received only one solo run that not only didn't last very long, but was actually more or less for copyright purposes to retain the name. So this is also what I mean when they deserve an expansion. They deserve their own solo stories. When it comes to the X-Men, when it comes to the Avengers, their individual characters also get their own solos. That's something that's very different. And I know that's because usually they have much larger teams, but at the same time, we still have characters on one team that can go to another team and can even just run their own story. There's nothing wrong with I can't imagine why none of the other 3 can't actually hold their own stories. This expansion, especially with the upcoming MCU movie, I feel like is a must-have for the Fantastic Four going forward. They deserve an expansion of the franchise. We deserve, I think, a lot of readers who are very excited for the movie. I think the people who aren't comic readers who are very excited for the movie, who could actually get into these books, especially with Ryan North's. If there's one thing that this book is, it's new reader friendly. So I feel like with Ryan North's at the center, an expansion of the Fantastic Four, maybe bringing back the Future Foundation, anything like that, or having another Infinity comic, anything like that would actually really help, not just the actual comic, but Ryan himself. It could really help take a lot of pressure of what he's trying to do in his book off him a little bit, and maybe even help develop his story by having something else to work off. Okay, so Fantastic Four 27. It was definitely a good starting point when talking about Nicki. When also talking about the things she's actually going to have to be going through, there are things that are not just seen here that I'm not sure if Ryan intended or if the artist. Sorry, hang on a second. If the artist Stephen Cummings intended. But there are actually some moments that are worth talking about. Like this moment here, when Nicki is actually talking about feeling uncomfortable about the way shapeshifters are seen on Earth, we are seen with this teacher talking about the shapeshifters and how they're usually seen, and she is looking right at Nicki here. Like, she knows that Nicki's a Skrull. This is something that actually is probably, I feel like, might actually be on Ryan's mind. I get the feeling that he knows what he's doing here. While at the end, Nicki is definitely getting closer with these kids, the adults are probably going to be more of a problem. Not only have they experienced the Skrulls, but as it's always said, hatred is taught. So we haven't seen parents' point of view saying about worrying about their kids being raised with Skrulls and Kree and aliens and all that. And that might actually be coming up now because we just got attacked by the Mole Man. So that's probably going to be something that's going to be coming up. I'm not going to say I'm not going to sit here and say that 27 is its own full-on standalone issue. This definitely is to build something when it comes to not just Nikki but also Joe. It could be that after the Doom event, Ryan's going to bring this type of story points back, or another writer could be bringing it back. Writers that I would like to see maybe tackle these type of issues would include Cody Ziegler. He's an absolute bomber of a writer. I love his work. His Miles is great. Eve Ewing. I've already explained how much I love Eve Ewing and her exceptional X-Men in a previous video. And her with these kids dealing with these emotional issues, I don't think anyone could top that. So, like I said, Ryan's run is mainly laying out groundwork, and I feel like this is actually what this issue is. It's not supposed to be the be all end all of Nikki's story. It's just that she actually learns to accept herself, that she isn't the monster, that despite the fact that humans think shapeshifters are monsters, she isn't, and that's a good message. Especially because not only in this issue do we see made possible as some possible what's it called? Not passive aggressivism, microaggression. What possibly a microaggression from a teacher? We've also got some, quite frankly, straight up aggression. When fighting the Mole Man, he doesn't just say that just some kid. He doesn't say that this is just some trickery or something when he figures out that Nikki is actually pretending to be the Fantastic Four. He says, "You're a damned dirty Skrull." He's viewing the Skrulls as a damn dirty race. He's viewing them as this he's lumping her in with all the ones that have done all these horrible things, as well as just looking at such a generalized view of her species. This is bigoted behavior. And here's the thing. This isn't the only time Nikki has gone through this. This is the second. And quite frankly, compared to the first time, this one isn't even that bad, because the first time was against Wolverine. When introduced, granted, this. You know what? No, not even granted. It's still a bad thing to do. So, while she was transformed, she notices Alicia and she wants to get closer to Alicia. She knows about Alicia when she was introduced. And Wolverine smelt a Skrull. He smelled a Skrull that was transformed, and he stabbed her, calling her a dirty Skrull. That's his opinion of him. This is a very bad thing and a very scary thing going forward, and a very hard thing for Nikki. This is going to be something she's going to have to live with, that she's going to have to put up with. This is why Nikki is actually not only just a very interesting character, she's also an important character. She is the Skrull that is publicly being raised on Earth. You had Teddy Altman, the Hulkling, who was a Skrull raised on Earth, but he did it in hiding. She's being open. So she's going to have to deal with a lot of anti-Skrull bigotry and aggression coming up her way, quite possibly from other superheroes who had to deal with the Skrulls. This could be bad for characters like Spider-Woman, who's had massive trauma over the Skrulls. So, and Wolverine's only regretful when he realizes it's a kid, but the fact he didn't even think that it could be a kid never entered his mind. You know Wolverine. He just goes instantly for the stab. So we don't know. Like, this is not the be-all, end-all. If anything, the good thing he does here was bring the idea that she's going to have to go through this. This is why Ryan is a good writer. He could have done this as a part 2. Well, no, he couldn't have done this as a part 2 because he currently has a scheduling conflict and has to work on the Doom event. That's where we're starting the year. This could still come up again. This could, he needs to leave it for a little while, let what the consequences of what he's trying to put forward stew a bit, and then we'll get to it later on. Or maybe someone else can work on it. He put in the idea of how hard it's going to be for Nikki and how she has to see herself so she can get through it. Another writer can come in and take some of the things I said and maybe work off that. But the one thing no writer should undo is Nicki viewing herself as a person, not as a monster. She has that sense of self and sense of trust in herself. That's a great thing. And it's definitely can be this is a good starting point for so many writers when it comes to talking about Nicki Grimm. And I'm really excited to see where her story, as well as Joe's, as well as the entire Grimm family and the whole Fantastic Four go in the future. Because I would really like to see Nicki and Joe's relationship, not just with their parents, but with the rest of the family. Especially after in this issue when they were just adopted, they're having dinner because they're celebrating the adoption, and Nicki remarks that her uncle is now a person that is well hated amongst the Strolls. So this would actually be a fun topic to bring up. This would be a fun pairing to talk about, just like I said with She-Hulk. Okay, so we're going to wrap it up now. I finally got everything else I wanted to say. So the weakness of Ryan's writing is the fact he can't build up narratively, but he can build. And he's doing a good job of building with what he can and how he's doing it. And I'm really looking forward to more of his writing. But I would appreciate an expansion of the Fantastic Four to give him that kind of narrative standpoint, working off what Ryan is working on right now. I really hope to see that one day. Stories for characters he can't always focus on, stories on the kids, maybe even just Infinity Comics, some small things just like cameos in other books. And he's hoping that his march with the Godzilla, with the Doom book, and with the actual Fantastic Four, I hope it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to Godzilla. Oh my god, I'm so excited for Godzilla. It's a power cosmic infused Ghidorah. How can I not be excited for this? Okay, I just watched King of the Monsters again. I am super hyped. It's going to be so awesome, man. All right. So in the future, we're going to start talking more Fantastic Four this year. So we're going to be talking about the characters. We're going to be talking about North's run as a whole. We're going to talk about some of the previous runs, some ideas of where we could go. How we're going to come up with some pitch ideas, all these type of things, as well as some more of a base on it, more stuff that's also just fun videos based off opinions and ideas, and including that, we are going to come back and have a particular video based off Storm. It's going to be a cool one, I promise you. I'm going to be putting that up soon. I hope you're excited for it because it's going to be really cool. So if you really want to see it, hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss it. Leave a comment below about what you thought about this video. I'm always dying to hear feedback from just about anybody. Leave your comments about what you think of the Fantastic Four, what you thought of Fantastic Four 27, what you think of Nicki Grimm, and where do you think she could go. Looking forward to see you next time. Thank you for listening. And once again, bye!